Every team has to start out with how we're going to win the game. And that's what the plan is, as far as I'm concerned. How are we going to win this game? Because business is a game.
Dr Jana Matthews, welcome to our series on leading in a changed world.
I'm delighted to be here, Ben. Thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure. So today we're going to talk about whether or not leaders should be considering thinking big or thinking small in unprecedented times like these. And the reason I'm so keen to talk to you about this topic is that you have an extraordinary skill set in helping companies grow, and you've been doing this across the globe for many years, and you're an accomplished author as well. Can you give some viewers the background on who is Dr Jana Matthews?
So I'm actually an English major gone bad. Started in English literary criticism, and then did a degree in anthropology, sociology, and psych. And in fact, backed into business when I was a consultant at Arthur D. Little, a technology consulting firm. And then went to Harvard and did a special degree that was at the business school, MIT Sloan School, the Kennedy School. And so I really looked at the whole process of organizational development and the development of people inside organizations as well. And from there, I went off and within 3 years was doing my own company, the first of 5, I guess, and had been really focused on something that drives me personally, which is how to help create self-sufficient people in healthy communities. And we can do that by giving people money, or we can do that by giving people skills, especially the skills of business building, so they can build great companies that are places where people can perform at their best and develop products and services that customers love, generate revenue, and of course that ends up being a healthy community with taxes and jobs. So I have a big vision of what I wanted to do, and I just have to align myself with the organizations that can support the big vision.
Great. So you've got a lot of experience. How does this time compare to others that you've helped companies navigate through, the dot-com crash, the GFC, etc.?
So it's really an advantage to have been through 9/11, dot-com, GFC, and this, because I can keep this in perspective. So wherever the people are saying, oh, I know, I could say, yeah, right, okay, you think this is bad. I walked out of giving a speech at Cambridge. Somebody said, there are airplanes that went into the Twin Towers. I said, that's a Bruce Willis movie. That can't be true. Indeed, it was true. And I was stuck in the UK for several weeks. No planes were flying. Everybody in the US went to ground. I mean, they bought all the groceries and they closed their doors. They weren't sure whether we were going to be invaded, another plane was going to fly, and no planes were flying. And so, again, I'm in China when the GFC hit, and look at the newspaper with gold coming down the sides of the newspaper. And so how do you get through that? It's the mental persistence, tenacity, as resilience that you need to have as an owner. And as I'm working with people now, especially from folks that were in Melbourne and they're feeling sorry for themselves, and I'm sorry as well. But I said to them, let's put yourself in a real position of people who are getting up, who have cancer and aren't even sure they're going to live for 6 months. And every day it's worse than the day before because they're on chemo. So let's put this in perspective. You have an opportunity to step back, look at what's going on in your company, look at the right people, look at your customers, look at the products that you have, and a chance to almost have a do-over if you need to. What kind of a gift is that? So part of it is helping people reframe issues. Part of it is giving them the tool skills to do the job. And part of it is just my excitement when I see the sort of light shine from their eyes, the scales fall, from their eyes, and they go like, I get it, now I understand. And they go off and they do it.
So are leaders responding differently today than what they did through those other periods of time? Or are you seeing the same type of challenges and the same type of thought processes as you did back then?
Yes, I am, actually. I'm seeing some people that are being, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Some people are, this is a huge opportunity for us. I was just on a board meeting this morning with a company that its sales are skyrocketing because it has a software that's exactly what companies need in terms of contactless pickup and payment. So part of it depends on how you approach the problem, And part of it depends on maybe you happen to be lucky in the right place at the right time. And part of it depends on whether you have a lot of things in place. Have you put in the systems that give you the data? Have you hired the people that will perform? Have you created the culture of high performance? Have you selected an executive team with the people who have the skills who can now help you lead? Can you deploy rapidly once you've made a decision? No, that is also a huge plus for companies that are getting through this relatively unscarred. In fact, we've had 7% of our companies that are growing 50% or more.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, there's lots of going on in the media and lots of commentary around how to survive at this time. Can you talk about why rebound and grow is a better language to use if you're a business leader?
Oh, yes. I totally agree. I am over watching the media that's painting this dire gloom and doom and it's getting worse, because it actually isn't. It isn't getting worse. It's different. And different means you have opportunities now to look at what customers want and buy and what do they value and what do we have that we can offer. Different means you look at the people who are now working in your company and deciding, are they the people that are going to get me to the next level? Because at least in Australia, we have the largest talent pool probably we've ever had available to be hired in jobs. Different means, do we have the customers that are actually the ones that we can help be successful with our products and services, and the ones who are ideal for us because they give us revenue, profitability, they're strategically aligned with us, and we love working with them. Different means I'm looking at myself and I'm saying, do I have the skills necessary to take us to the next level? Also means looking at what we're doing financially, and if I have to decide, do I want to go to the bank and get money? Am I going to put some more of my own money? Or am I going to bring in an outside investor? All of those are the things that people have a chance now to do. And depending on which choices you make, you will rebound more quickly or not.
In our catch up a few weeks ago, you mentioned a great quote from Henry Ford, and I'll get you to mention that to us in a second, who incidentally navigated the company through the 1918 flu pandemic, the 1929 Great Depression, and he certainly knew about tough competition. If you think you can or you think you can't, you will be right.
That's right. So much of what's going on is your mental framework, the mindset that you have, the positive mindset. And I'm reminded again of Jim Collins' book where he talked about General Stockdale when he'd been captured by the Vietnamese, imprisoned for 7 years, regularly taken out in front of his men and beaten. And Jim said, how did you get through that? And he said, I always believed I would, but I always faced the brutal honesty of the reality of my situation. And when Jim asked him who didn't make it, he said, the ones who thought we would be out by Christmas, and Christmas came and went, and then Easter, and then Thanksgiving, and then Christmas, and they gave up hope. And I think they died more because hope died. And this is such an important thing. You really need to have the positive mindset that you will get through this. Whatever it is, we will get through this. But we have to be smart enough to assess the risks, put in place the strategies, the risk mitigation, and look at the opportunities that will be available to us.
Mindset on its own is important, but it's not enough. What are the things that leaders really need to be doing, actually doing right now, to change the course of their future?
Yes. Well, you're right. Positive mindset is a requirement. It's necessary but not sufficient to get through. So what are the things that you have at your disposal to grow a company? First and most important, of course, are customers. So let's take a look at what our customers are wanting. What do they value? What are they willing to pay for? What are they buying? How are we servicing them? What's the customer experience? Second is, let's look at the people that we have on board to actually deliver the products and the services, the customer service and so on. Do we have the right people? Are they in the right jobs? Do they match our culture? Do they match our values? And that can be extended when you look then at partnerships that you have, which will take you into new channels. So do we have the right partners? Are we working with people who can extend what we're doing, not be negative energy? And if that's not working, then you need to be willing to tie off relationships, whether it's with people or partnerships, and find the ones that are going to enable you to get to the next level. You need to look at your own self in terms of your skills. Have you been working and are you doing a good job in delegating? Have you done a good job in communicating where we are, what we need to do? Have you hired the right executive team members and are you sharing responsibility with them? Have you worked together to develop a plan, a 3-year plan? I'm happy that the Chinese can have a 500-year plan. 5 years is stretching it for me. 3 years seems manageable, 36 months.
Jenna, I imagine there's a lot of people that are saying 3-year plan. I can't even think 3 months ahead, let alone have a 3-year plan in place. What do you say to them?
So Ben, I say if you don't know where you want to go, any road can take you there. And let me give you some stories about people who've had 3-year plans. It's not that they stick rigidly to the plan. It's that they have the direction they want to go. They know what the end goal is. They have a series of steps and things they're going to do. And so they look at that and they say, well, I don't think it makes sense for us to launch that product in 15 states in the US. So we're going to call that distributor and go, we're putting that on hold. But this thing we were going to do in year 3, that makes sense now. Let's bring that forward. And so that's on the game plan. It's just changing the priorities now. And they would not have thought that through if they hadn't actually had a plan. And they couldn't have actually made all those decisions within a matter of 18 hours if they hadn't actually done a lot of thinking ahead of time that went into that plan.
So when you're developing a 3-year plan with an organisation, given the current environment with the pandemic, is the 3-year plan in line with the expectation that that will still be impacting business significantly in 3 years? Or do you put a time frame around when you might think it will be where the issues will subside and will be back to relative normal?
Ben, there's always going to be something. It's going to be a bushfire, it's going to be a pandemic, it's going to be something that's a risk. There are lots of risks that interest rates go up or down, Trump gets elected or not, Brexit happens, it gets worse, markets disappear in Europe because of COVID coming back. You've just got to look at what those risks are and plan for risks, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have an offensive game plan. Every team has to start out with how we're going to win the game. And that's what the plan is, as far as I'm concerned. How are we going to win this game? Because business is a game. You have customers, you have players, you have employees, you have revenue. We have ways of keeping score. And so for me, this is a really exciting opportunity to say, although the rules have changed, although the field is slightly different, maybe it's soggy or maybe it's muddy or maybe some of our competition has been taken out because they didn't have as good a management as we do, and now we have a chance to move ahead. So you still do the 3-year plan in terms of what is it that you want to happen proactively, recognizing that what are some of the constraints that may impact our choices as we move down the path.
Jana, I would love an example on what a 3-year plan looks like, and I think our listeners would love an example as well.
So we start with something that is called the planning memorandum. And in that memorandum, the very first thing is, what is your mission? What is your reason for being as a company? I suppose Simon Sinek would say, what is your why? Mm-hmm. So we have them really think through that very carefully. Secondly, then, we talk about what are the values that define who you are as a company, that terms of engagement with your employees and suppliers, vendors, customers, and so forth. So they define those, and they talk about what are the behaviors associated with that. It's teamwork, or it's integrity, or maybe it's innovation. Different companies have different things that are important to them. Then we ask you to dream a little bit. If you could look in the sky and imagine where you would like for the company to be in 3 years, what would that be? Let's talk about, would you have offices in other places? Would you have a new product? Would you have different customers? And people aren't used to doing this. This is very hard for them to dream. I was a little girl growing up in Indiana, no brothers and sisters, no kids in the neighborhood. So I spent a lot of time under the apple tree, looking at the clouds and imagining what they were and where I would go in life and what I would do. Maybe I have an overactive imagination. But for those who can't write the story, in 3 years, we'll have all these buildings, we'll have the parking lot full of cars, we'll have another pizza parlor in town to deliver pizza, we'll have offices in Chicago and Dallas, we'll have to have people flying in, we'll be flying there, we'll have to have telecommunications here so we can communicate. And then suddenly the employees get it. They see what's the picture of what it is that's going to happen. And so when you come back and say, we've rented office in Denver, they don't go like, oh my God, we're moving to Denver, I'm going to lose my job. They go like, oh, great, we're growing, just like Jeff said we would. So now, not everybody can write the story like a Jeff. So I give you that what I call the mosaic, put in the boxes. Numbers of customers this year, next year, numbers of products this year, next year, numbers of new markets we're going into, numbers of employees that would be, amount of money we're likely to need. So then you can sort of get the little mosaic version of the story, and then you can maybe do the story. Then we talk about, so what are the risks? What's going to get in the way of doing that? And it could be COVID, it could be we don't have enough money, it could be, what are the things we must do? New partnership, add another department division, a major member of the executive team. So we talk about that, and then we talk about what's the staffing plan that would look like over the next 3 years. Who are the senior people that you would need to be adding in order to be able to do the stuff you've just talked about? And then we talk about, so what are the measures of success? And they go, oh, we'll have more revenue. Well, let's talk about smart measures. How much more revenue, by when, what kind of profitability? You want to be better known in the media. Why? Well, so we can attract people. So we get people to be quite specific about what it is that they would measure their success by. And then we talk about, all right, then if that's what we want to do over the next 3 years, let's get specific here in terms of year one. What are we going to do this year in terms of an operational plan that's going to start us, chart the path, if you will, start us on that path? And so we have the revenue goal, and then we have the customers or markets that we're going to go into, and then we have the products or services that we're going to take to them, and then we have the marketing strategies we're going to use, and then we have the infrastructure, the people, the systems, the finance, whatever, that we need to put in place in order to support what we've just said. So getting people to understand, you've got to have the customers, the products, the marketing, all of those things have got to be part of your plan. You just can't say, well, we're going to hire 3 more people and develop a new product this year and say that's your 3-year plan.
That's a very logical process from a business planning perspective. And really your view is that irrespective of it's COVID or it's 9/11 or it's some other thing in the future that we haven't yet foreseen, that process stands up and is robust regardless of the circumstances in which we find ourselves.
So all I can say is the people who go through that process and the people that we have looked at what's happening, their compound annual growth rate is 15.5% for revenue and 13.6% for jobs. So I will say the proof is in the pudding.
Absolutely, absolutely. So before we wrap up, maybe if you've got 3 sort of key takeaways for leaders watching this, what would they be?
For me, the first thing to focus on is customers' success. Not just customers, but what do customers need in order to be successful? So that means in some cases you may need to put yourself in the shoes of the customer and look at the markets, look at yourself in terms of what you're delivering to them, look at their customers and see what they need, and understand that the primary goal that you have is not just to serve your customers, but to make your customers be successful. And it's all about customers. If you don't have customers, you don't have revenue, you don't have a business. That's thing one. Second is take risks. It's very important that we understand that we are going to need, and you must in business, to take risks. I was just listening to Philip Lowe yesterday in a small roundtable, and he said one of his concerns is that Australians will back away from risk at all levels, from a personal level, a corporate level, a company level, small and medium business level, and politically, as opposed to assessing the risks, looking at risk mitigation strategies, and then understanding that we can't score goals if we don't take risks. We can't grow if we don't take risks. So it's understanding what needs to be put in place and how to monitor and manage that. So understand we need to take risks to grow.
So let's talk about risk and risk in different countries, because you've spent time worked and lived in the US, you work and live here in Australia, you've spoken around the world. Do different countries have different risk appetites?
That's a hard one to answer because I think it's more to do with individual people and maybe the socialization of people, and perhaps that's related to the countries that they're living in. It's perhaps so obviously in the US we look at that as very entrepreneurial, and that's partly related to the sort of DNA of the rugged individualism and the person who's willing to take risks. And sometimes that goes bad. Sometimes they're willing to take risks with other people's money that they shouldn't, and so forth. Australians are more cautious, more careful, even to the point of using their own money to grow. Like 84% of our companies are using their own money, not the bank's money, not another investor's money, not even the government's money. Only 50% have been using government money and grants and so forth. So getting people to understand that using other people's money and sometimes is a good thing, especially in debt is a good thing if you're able to leverage that and get into some new markets quickly. So is that a country or is that the socialization of the people within the country? It's an interesting question. I think I'd have to think some more about that.
It's a really interesting topic, I think, and I deal with customers all over the world, and I do find that, and even within countries, you find some cities, the general economics of that city and the behaviours of people in business in each of those cities differs from city to city.
Yes, I was thinking hard because when I was doing some work in China, it could be that it's just the people that are attracted to come hear me, or the ones who want to, where I happen to be, that I'm seeing a special select set of people. And so I don't see the whole rest of the people who are averse to growth or averse to the risks. I think maybe that's what's happening perhaps in the program. People who want to grow come here. People who don't want to grow don't come to the program. So they don't grow and these guys do grow. So there we are.
All right, so what's your number 3 tip for our leaders?
So number 3 is a combination of what I call sort of stay hungry, be choosy, and keep learning. So there's got to be a hunger, a curiosity to keep learning more, because as the company grows and goes through different levels, your role as the CEO changes quite dramatically, and you need to understand how to step into these new roles and responsibilities. So you learn that by surrounding yourself with mentors, other people who've been there, advisors, board members, lawyers, accountants, service providers, other people who know more than you do. And so that's why it's really important to then be choosy about who you're learning from, because not everybody has been through a growth experience, and some people can actually give you the wrong advice because they are more risk averse, they don't understand what it's like in your industry, they've never been in your shoes, they've always been in a large corporate organization. So you need to be choosy, including which CEO events you go to and who you network with and who you take advice from. But overall, you've got to keep learning. That's so essential as a CEO of a growing company, because the problems, the opportunities that you face today, tomorrow they're going to be really different. And all the things that work today may not work tomorrow. So you can't go, oh, I learned to ride a bike, now I'm going to ride this bike forever. Well, yeah, but we just switched you into a Maserati, right? All the things you learned about a bike, they don't work on the Maserati. So you got to learn a whole set of new skills. And that the point is, people can learn this. We've proven that people can learn to grow. You're not born knowing how to drive a car, but you can learn to drive a Maserati. Maybe some better than others, but you can still learn. Maybe you don't want a Maserati. Maybe you're very happy with the Ford Fiesta, or maybe just a Tesla. Whatever. You don't have to stay on the bicycle.
Jana, I really love talking to you because you certainly do balance out a lot of the negative talk about these times. I love your excitement about growth for companies. Thank you so much for your time today and your valuable insight into how people can lead in a changed world. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks, Ben.